Hi, I'm Graham Lennox from the Sunday Times Ireland. We're here in the middle of the Wicklow Mountains today and we're here to see some drone racing. We're meeting up with the guys from FPV Ireland, which is a unique take on drone racing, using these headsets to get a first-person view of the action. So these guys are literally flying by the seat of their pants, and they'll be reaching speeds of between 80 and 100 kilometers per hour while navigating a series of gates, and there's going to be a few crashes. Garrod, could you tell us a little bit about FPV Ireland, please?
FPV Ireland is our Facebook group, and it's designed to bring together all the FPV pilots in Ireland. As well as that, we're trying to develop local clubs. So here in Leinster we're developing a Leinster FPV, and then as well as that, last year we ran the first national championship, which brought pilots from all over the country. It was the Irish Drone National, so I was the race director for that event, and it was a great success. We were lucky enough to get sponsorship from iFlight Technology and Aerial Media Limited, and because of that sponsorship and because of the great support of pilots who are here today racing, we managed to have a very successful and exciting day.
How many drone racers do you think there are in the whole of Ireland?
It's a very good question, and it's one that's been asked by a lot of people. It's difficult to say. On a standard meet here we'd have 12 to 15 people, but every day it's different faces, and we can see a lot of people who may not be able to travel, though we have people coming all the way from north of Belfast here today. On our Facebook group we have 300 pilots though, which is incredibly high, relatively speaking, for Ireland. So I would say active flyers, certainly in excess of 200 in Ireland.
And can you tell me how the race meets work and what's involved in terms of the speeds, etc.?
Mm-hmm. So I suppose we're in some ways we're writing the rule book, because this is a brand new sport and it's quite different to standard or traditional model flying, particularly because the pilot sits on board and your perspective is completely altered and changed. I come from a background which is focused in on safety and developing safety standards, so I've brought that experience to our meets here. So initially, at the start of every day, we have a brief and we explain to people, and the core for us is segregation. So we have an area that is for flying drones, we have an area for people, and then we have a buffer in between. We are very strict in if a drone crosses that line, or if a person crosses into that buffer zone in the centre, we make sure that doesn't happen. And that really is the core, that we segregate drones and people, and that people respect those areas and they understand the energy of the aircraft. So we will design the course so that it channels energy into areas that it doesn't matter if somebody loses control. So for example, into the bushland or into the trees. And
how much are these drones?
That's another good question. The sport, it's not prohibitively expensive to get into, but there is a little bit of an outlay at first, because you have to buy a set of goggles, which can cost, you can get a cheaper set for €40. You can get more advanced versions for in the hundreds of euro. You have to get a transmitter, and again, it's good to invest in the early stage with a good transmitter. So you might be looking at €200. The parts of the drones themselves are very, very cheap. You're looking at, for a motor, is €10. But the problem is, with a quad you have 4, with a hex you have 6, and then you speed controllers. There's quite a lot of components. So initially, to build the quad, you're looking at about maybe €130. But then to replace, it's very, very cheap, because one motor might break, or generally on most meets you'll break a number of propellers. So, but again, you're looking at 50 cents per propeller. So the costs are relatively low.
As we've seen today, crashing is an issue. Is it something you just have to get on with and bite the bullet, or is there genuine anguish and pain amongst the flyers who take a nosedive into the field?
Yeah, this sport is, we have a rule that if you're not crashing, you're not flying fast enough. It's very different to model flying, because with scale model you build the aircraft and you put all your life and soul into the aircraft. And if you crash it, you lose the aircraft, and it might never fly again, or you cause a lot of expensive damage. The thrill with FPV flying is you're on board, so you see what the drone sees, and you get that sense of exhilaration, that rush, because you're so low and you're so fast. With that comes a lot of crashes, and that's actually part of it. So rather than avoiding crashes, you welcome them. But with the design of the course here, generally if you crash, you can't take off again, and you have to wait maybe another 20 minutes to have a go. So what we encourage people to do is to fly nice and slowly at first, and then build up the speed and build up the speed. So you find that sweet spot where you're getting the thrill like you're on a roller coaster, but you're still flying within your own capabilities, all the while doing so safely.
And is it a sport that quickly bites you, or is it people get hooked very easily?
In seconds. We bring people out. We always encourage people to try, and especially younger people, it captures their imagination. Put the goggles on. My vision for what this sport could be is all too often now we see kids indoors playing computer games for hours and hours and hours, and if you can channel that energy into something productive like a sport like FPV racing, it's absolutely incredible what those kids could do. You imagine the same scenario where someone is playing a computer game for 3 or 4 hours. Because this is more immersive and you feel like you're on board, I believe that the kids could become more addictive, but in a positive way, to a sport like this. Where it gets really, really special is when the child crashes the drone, they have to fix the drone. To fix the drone, they have to attain skills. So they have to learn to solder. They have to learn how to build the aircraft. They have to learn research, which is an incredibly important skill. They have to go and find, because they might not have very much money, they have to go and find where to source that part. Does it make more sense to get that part delivered by it in Ireland or get it delivered abroad? And it also teaches them patience, because you have to go that little bit slower and you have to wait for maybe propellers to arrive, and in that meantime you're still researching more and more to try and build your quad up. So it's a really, really exciting sport from that perspective.